Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Martin will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Martin.
Our chaplain of the day is the Reverend Mitch McClure, who's been in the gospel ministry since 1977 and the pastor of Middle Valley Church of God since 1997. There are two things in life you do not want to miss. That's the rapture and Sunday morning at Middle Valley Church of God.
Amen.
Mitch is he is an individual from Bradley County who went to Bradley County High School, Cleveland State Community College, East Tennessee State, and also has a Master of Arts in Counseling from the Church of God Seminary. He has a wife and two children. One of his sons is a chaplain in the United States Army and has a granddaughter. He's been involved in community like most of us in this room, serving as the chairman of the PTA of 3 different schools, not just on the board, but as the chairman of the board at Loftus Middle School, Gans Middle Valley, and Pond Creek. When Mitch served on the Dallas Bay Volunteer Fire Department in our community, he served as the chairman of the board and at that time was the only volunteer fire department in the state of Tennessee with a level 2 ISO rating, which we were very proud of in our community. He has served as a county commissioner. On an interim appointment, he has served as a chaplain, as the senior chaplain for the Sheriff's Department in Hamilton County, and serves currently in the Emergency Services Department as a chaplain. He's going to lead us to the throne of God in just a moment, but I want to remind you that Thomas Jefferson said that we have inalienable rights, and they're rights that were given by our Creator to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Brother McClure is going to lead us to that Creator that gives us those rights. The First Amendment says that we have the freedom to assemble and the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, and that too is an inalienable right that has been given by our God. There are judges that have affirmed it. There are others that said amen. But Brother McClure is going to lead us to the one that has given us that as an inalienable right. Blood has been spilled all over this country for our freedom, all the way from the men who rushed to Kings Mountain to the people that serve in the military, to give us the right to defend our own rights and our own families, as the little shepherd boy David did when he was challenged by Goliath. But it is God that gives us that inalienable rights. And I would invite you to pray with us as Brother McClure leads us to the God who gives us these rights that we cherish as American citizens.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Speaker, members, thank you for the opportunity. It is a privilege to be here, and I will say amen to Representative Martin. I may not even need to pray now, but I thank you for this opportunity, and I was telling Representative Shaw earlier, I appreciate what you do here and how you, because this is important. It's important, and I want to pray for you. The scripture says that we should pray for you, and I do. And I am going to do that now. Let's pray together. Lord, how could we not recognize your goodness? You have blessed this great state. It's amazing, the great state of Tennessee, what you've done for it. And Father, how you blessed us as individuals in our families, and you've helped us and with so many things. But it's not just about things, Lord, but it's about how that you help us with wisdom. You said in your word that if we have need of wisdom, to seek you and you would give it to us. And I'm praying this evening for every one of these members in this great place, that when they do need wisdom, that they seek you and they work together for the goodness of this state. And Lord, if there's anything that I could ask you to do, not just to bless this state, but to bless the citizens of this state, they deserve it. There are people that work hard and do good. And I pray right now in the name of Jesus Christ that you would help these members tonight, give them understanding as they end their session. In Christ's name, amen.
Representative Martin will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please face the flag and render the proper salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 95 members present.
Let journal reflect. Representative Potts is excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring
Welcome and honoring Representative Doggett. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant of Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Representative Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 926 by Chairman Doggett and others, a resolution to recognize Brian Grisham on the occasion of his retirement. Whereas it is appropriate that the members of this General Assembly should honor those citizens who have performed with uncommon devotion and enthusiasm throughout their years of public service. And whereas Brian Grisham is one such estimable person who has distinguished himself as a professional of the greatest dedication, ability, and integrity. And whereas having served with distinction as Director of Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy and the Executive Secretary of the Tennessee Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission since April 2005, Mr. Grisham began his much-deserved retirement on January 2022. And whereas Mr. Grisham served as an Assistant Director of TLETA from 1997 to 2005, and he was highly regarded in his earlier roles as Assistant to the Commissioner and Staff Attorney for the Tennessee Department of Safety. And whereas Brian Grisham received a Bachelor of Science degree from Middle Tennessee State University in 1984 and his law degree from the Nashville School of Law in 1989. And whereas an accomplished professional, Mr. Grisham is a graduate of the Tennessee Government Executive Institute and the FBI National Law Institute. In 2011, he was appointed to the Governor's Subcabinet for Public Safety. And in 2016, he was appointed to the 2017 President of the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training. And whereas Brian Grisham is wholly committed to the noble precepts of public service that have earned Tennessee recognition as a volunteer state, and he should be specially recognized for his many years of honorable and astute service to the citizens of Tennessee. Now, therefore, be it resolved with the House of Representatives of 112 General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we extend to Brian Grisham our heartfelt wishes for a happy and fulfilling retirement, offering our deepest gratitude for his distinguished service to this state, and wishing him every continued success in his future endeavors.
Representative Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm honored to have Mr. Brian Grisham today with us, also as his wife Teresa and daughter Scarlett. They have some friends and family members up in the gallery and other children that are watching live on the internet as we speak. For any of you that have been through or know anything about the Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy, especially since the late 90s, Mr. Grisham has been a staple there. He was director when I went through back in 2011. And so he's very much he's a large figure for you when you go through as a candidate or a cadet at the Law Enforcement Training Academy. Great example of what law enforcement officers should look to and achieve to be. He served this great state for many, many years in his capacity in law enforcement. Now we have with us up here Director Kane that is now taking over. And so I'm glad that we were able to do this for him. He retired late last year, was it? January. And so it's a great honor to have him here with us today. And Mr. Speaker, if you would allow Director to say a few words.
Yes, sir. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, everyone, for this honor. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve the citizens of Tennessee in so many different roles. Most importantly, to have a little part in professionalizing law enforcement, bringing it to a noble profession from just a job back in the 80s. And it's a further honor to continue this role at the national and international level. I'm going to continue to be involved in law enforcement standards and training on the national and international level. Thank you very much. This is very, very well received. Thank you.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you join us in the well for a photograph?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Hofford, would you join me in the well?
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 953 by Chairman Faison and others, a resolution to honor Chairman Curtis Alford for his exemplary service to the General Assembly and the state of Tennessee, where it is most fitting that this body should recognize the dedicated, effective, and long-serving elected official of the state of Tennessee, namely one Curtis Alford of Dyer, and whereas having proudly represented the good people of Gibson County and Carroll County for 14 years, Representative Alford has announced his retirement from the House of Representatives after building an enduring legacy of public service, and whereas the citizens of the 79th House District have counted on Curtis Alford to represent their values and concerns at the state capitol, and he has done so ably while still maintaining his focus on matters of statewide importance. And whereas first elected to the 106th General Assembly, Representative Alford has capped his illustrious legislative career by serving as the chair of the House Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee since its inception some 10 years ago. And whereas Curtis Alford served Gibson County with distinction as a county commissioner before being elected to the General Assembly, and he is a former member of the Gibson County Planning Commission and graduate of Leadership Gibson County. And whereas he is a veteran who proudly served his country in the United States Air Force Reserve, and whereas Chairman Alford expressed his faith as a member of the Cumberland Presbyterian Church of Dyer, where he serves as an elder, and whereas his many accomplishments aside, Curtis Alford is most grateful for the love and companionship he shares with his wife, Charlotte, children Lori and Brad, and 5 grandchildren, Kate, Charlotte, Noah, Jeremiah, and Titus. And whereas Representative Curtis Alford has established a high standard for present and future legislative service, and he is most worthy of our approbation and appreciation as he departs these hallowed halls. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we honor Chairman Curtis Halford for his 14 years of distinguished service as a member of the General Assembly and his 10 years of leadership as the chair of the House Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee, and wish him all the best as he continues life's journey.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Curtis, this is bittersweet, buddy. This is a hard one for most of us. All these retirements are difficult anytime you have someone who has given their time to service. But before we say anything about you, because we can brag on you all day, I want to say from the bottom of our heart to your entire family, thank you for giving so much of him to us, because he's missed birthday parties, he's missed anniversaries, he's missed, I'll guarantee you, athletic events at schools and everything else, because he's been here working on behalf of the entire state of Tennessee. And to you young gentlemen down here, I hope you know that, is this your granddaddy here? I hope you know he is a phenomenal man. And when you got a little gray hair on your head and you have lived as long as he has, I hope that what they say about you two is that you have been a very, very good man, that each of you have. And I know you will, because you come from good stock. Curtis, I just want to thank you for your friendship. For all of us here, we've learned from him. And when I first got elected, y'all will not be surprised to hear this, that I had a very veteran member to come into me, not Curtis, but a very veteran member say, all right, young man, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak. Now, I'll admit I failed at that from time to time, but every single time I turned around, I saw Curtis Halford listening twice as much as he spoke, analyzing everything. And he was that quiet, just tone of resolve anytime we were dealing with an issue, where he'd kind of pull you aside. And it wasn't out there in the news. It wasn't out there on Facebook. It wasn't even many times on the floor or said in committee, but it was that little bit of advice. It was that little bit of support. It was that little bit of lifting up that I appreciated. And I want you to know that your service to this state has made a massive difference. And I want to thank all of you as his family for supporting him as he fought hard for you guys and for everybody in his district in this state, because your service has made a difference, my friend. Mr. Speaker, if we can recognize Chairman Faison, please.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think if you looked in the encyclopedia or Wikipedia for the Irwins and looked up gentleman, you would find Curtis Halford. From the time that I was elected in 2010 to this very day, I have watched a man who embodies the word gentleman. He has earned the respect. Family, you need to know this. He has earned the respect from every member here, Democrat and Republican alike. People genuinely love him. I'm going to tell you a quick story. A few weeks ago, I was pulling back up to the Cumberland, and I saw Chairman Halford walking in. I thought, I'm going to call him and see if I can take him for a drink. So I called him and said, hey, let's go get a drink together. He said, Jeremy, just come up to my condo. So I went down to his condo, and we sat there and started to have a little drink together. And I said, Curtis, can you tell me one of the most meaningful things that have happened in your 14 years since you've been here? And I'll never forget what he said, because I was anticipating something about him. And when I asked him what is the most meaningful things that have happened to you since you've been here, he brought up the things he's done for his district. He brought up the people that he's been able to help. He brought up the issues that he was able to navigate and fix for the people at home. It was not about him. It was about the people at home. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. And it's just a complete honor to serve with you. You're an example to many of us of how to be a true Southern gentleman. Mr. Speaker, could we recognize the chairman?
Chairman Halford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess the first thing I need to say and want to say is thanks to these people right here. They did everything for me they could possibly do. She was cloned to my hip right here. She was working when I first started running. She'd work all day, come home and go campaigning with me. You can't do this alone. You got to have help from your family and your friends. And that's what I had, is help from my family and my friends. But not only my family and my friends, but my constituents. My constituents mean everything to me. I tell my staff almost every day, what comes first? Their answer is our constituents come first. And that's what our business is about here, is to help our constituents, to do something for them that they can't do for themselves. So that's what I made my purpose to be, is to be a help to my constituents. I hope I've done that well. And I guess the next thing I would say is that, you know, I've been here 14 years. I never expected to be here that long. It doesn't seem like 14 years. It's just kind of flown by, hasn't it, Dave Hawk? Dave was here when I came here, so he's one of the few that was here, that's still here when I came here. But it's an honor to stand here in this well and to look out and see everybody and not be afraid like I was the very first time I stood up here, you know. And I'll never forget that feeling. This is a little bit different feeling, although as William said, it is kind of bittersweet. And so it's been a great experience. I've loved serving my constituents and the folks in Tennessee. And I've loved serving with all of you. Many of you I've served with, the ones that have gone on before. I appreciate their help and everything I tried to do, and I appreciate your help. It's been an honor for me to stand here and serve with all of you. So I appreciate that very much, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, would you join us in the well for a picture? And any other members who came in with him or would like to be a part of this celebration with him, please come down with us. You hand it.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request that Representative Calfee join me in the well, and I request the Sergeant at Arms escort our guests into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 950 by Chairman Faison and others, a resolution to commend Representative Kent Calfee for his honorable and astute service to the people of Tennessee as a member of the House of Representatives. Whereas it is most appropriate that the members of this General Assembly should honor those fellow legislators who have performed their duties with the utmost integrity and whose efforts during their time in office have been dedicated to providing thoughtful and exemplary service to the districts and to this great state. And whereas Representative Kent Calfee of Kingston is one such distinguished public servant who has served both his constituency and this legislative body with honor and ability. And whereas during his tenure, Representative Calfee has been a highly influential figure in the political, social, and civic life of Roane and Loudoun counties. And he has served his constituents in numerous capacities, always working diligently at his elected duties and expending the necessary effort to understand the opposing sides of complex issues. And whereas Kent Calfee has distinguished himself as a public spirited citizen of the highest order and as an exceptional asset to the good people of the 37th House District, whom he has served as a member of the 108th through the 112th General Assemblies. And whereas throughout his service, Kent Calfee has been prominent as a dedicated and well-informed legislator who always votes his conscience. And whereas born on May 15th, 1949, Representative Calfee attended East Tennessee State University, and as a member of the Baptist faith, he retired from Oak Ridge National Laboratories and has been a farmer for many years. And whereas many accomplishments aside, Ken Calfee is most grateful for the love and support of his wife, Marilyn, and his 4 children and 7 grandchildren. And whereas Representative Ken Calfee is wholly committed to the noble precepts of public service that have earned Tennessee recognition as the volunteer state, and he should be specially recognized for his exemplary tenure in the General Assembly. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we hereby honor Representative Kent Calfee for his meritorious service to Tennessee as a member of the House of Representatives, commended for his countless contributions and many good works in service of the citizens of the 32nd House District, and extend to him our best wishes for much continued success and happiness.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was reminiscing this weekend with my 13-year-old son about Representative Calfee. Years ago when we were in War Memorial, we're both on the 2nd floor, and my son was only 3 years old. And one time I had the younger kids with me, and my wife had went with the governor's something going on. And so my boys left my office unbeknownst to me. I was busy, and they came back, and they're, literally like 3.5, 4 years old, with his little 2-year-old brother. And he came back and he had a wad of chocolate dripping out of his mouth and in his hands. And I'm like, what in the world, son, where have you been? And we finally got it out of him that he had been Representative Calfee's office. And he learned something very specific that day, and you need to hear about it because we talked about it while we were making s'mores Friday night. Representative Calfee looked at my 3-year-old son and handed him a special dark Hershey's chocolate bar. And he said, Asher, do you know what is special about special dark Hershey's chocolate bar? And little Asher's like, don't have a clue. He's like, because ladies like special dark. My 13-year-old son today still talks about it. We did s'mores Friday night at my house, and I bought special dark chocolate because I like it with s'mores. And I pulled it out, and Asher looked at me and said, that's what ladies like, Dad. And that came from 9 years ago. Many of us would get nervous. Some of us get excited. Some of us want to make national news in a good way. Doesn't always work out for some of us. There are times that a story comes out and makes national news, and it endears you to the heart of the people. In doubt, our friend, Representative Kent Calfee, made national news. If you Google him, you will find him. It was over everything. An artist actually drew a depiction. Keeping in the theme of chocolate, our very own Representative Kent Calfee was caught drinking chocolate on the House floor one day. I'm not sure if it was special dark chocolate, but we actually have got a little painting of that with some signatures from some of your friends. And I will end with this. This is for you, Representative Calfee.
Thank you, sir.
If you ever just need a little bit of entertainment, if you want to hear a story about something that happened somewhere in America, sit down and talk to Representative Calfee. The man has more stories than anybody I know. And here's the deal. They're fun to listen to. It's just a pure joy. Representative Calfee has come in and stayed in his lane, done his work, honored the people of his district in an incredible way. And to his sweet wife, the Silver Fox, and his new son and his son, we are so thankful that y'all loaned him to us for the last 10 years. We love him, and we are so grateful that you're here. Speaker Sexton, could we have the leader speak now?
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, Calfee, I don't know what to add to that, brother, but come here and stand next to me for a second, all right? So we've been meaning to tell you this for the better part of a decade. We all know that Maryland's the one that really makes most of your decisions. You realize that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're on to that. We know you know, but I mean, the rest of us know it too. And guys, I'm not joking. They've been a dynamic duo. And those that were in the 2012 class, come on up here. Bo, I see you in the back of the room. Come on now. We had 23 members that came in with us. And those come on, Love, come on, Jason. So Republicans and Democrats alike, and we were all a bunch of characters, okay? And those like Hawk and others that were here know what I mean by that. And we all didn't hold a candle to Calfee because, like Jeremy said, I would sit down with him, and any of you sit down with him, and you can tell him a story, and then he can tell you your story back to you 6 months from then, and it will be more interesting. Like, that's happened to me, okay? Like, that's a legitimate thing. That takes a certain skill and a certain talent to really care about other people. Because I'll tell you, beyond just telling stories, he'll listen to yours and just share back and forth. And I know talking about RV trips and life and family and just the state of Tennessee, Calfee, you're a good man, man. We're going to miss you. We're going to miss Maryland. And I don't know what this place is going to be like without you sitting up there in the front, drinking out of that bottle of Hershey syrup. And all of us had that figured out long before the national news figured it out. But for whatever reason, it took them a while to catch on. Brother, we love you. We wish you the best in your retirement. And Mr. Speaker, if you would, for probably the first time, recognize Representative Kent Calfee, please, sir.
Representative Calfee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to everybody. I had just got elected, and me and Marilyn were headed down here for the first time, and a friend of mine called me and told me about something somebody put on Facebook, which I don't look at Facebook, and it said something to the effect, well, we got a new state representative, but I don't have much confidence in him. He seems a little slow. Said it looks like his wife is the brains of the outfit, and everybody that knows, I went to life, and he said, you think that's funny? I said, anybody that knows both of us knows it's true. So anyway, I served 20 years on the county commission, and I got to traveling about 2 weeks out of the month for the national lab and having a ball. And I decided it's time to quit. And then a couple of years ago, Marilyn and I both literally were at death's door with COVID-19, and it just changed my outlook. And it's just not been as fun as it was earlier. And if we hadn't had a higher calling right here with Sawyer, we've had custody of him for over a year now, Marilyn would probably be running for this seat and would get elected. Because when I would be here and she was back home, she'd go to all these meetings and people tell me what a good job she did. And then some smart aleck say, yeah, we'd rather see her anytime as you. But anyway, it's time. I've enjoyed it. I'm going to miss, the list of people I'm going to miss is very long. The list of people I'm not going to miss, I can count on one hand. So, but it's been fun, and they can guess who they are, I guess. But anyway, people would say something about a politician. I'd say I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. I've never done anything to enrich myself or hurt anybody. And like Curtis Halford said, Nadine and I and Marilyn have been able to help a lot of people with a lot of things. And during the shutdown for COVID, Lord, I don't know how many people, I'd get out making the rounds of a morning, and then Marilyn would be on the computer, and Nadine didn't have internet up in Cottontown, so they was working together. And I think we got everybody that needed unemployment. So that's one of the highlights of the job, or the highlight of the job. And thanks to everybody for what they do. I know it's a sacrifice, but it's time to go home to the farm. As Sawyer calls it, the RV truck and the boat, and just enjoy this little man. Looks like we're going to have him for quite a while. And Marilyn and I talked and prayed about running for this job for 2 months. Took us about 2 minutes to decide we was going to take Sawyer in and give him a safe place to live. So, and thanks to everybody. I know it's a heartache sometimes to be up here, but not very often. Most of it is really good. And thank you so much. And I've got, of course, when Marilyn let her hair go natural, I started calling her the Silver Fox, and some of you don't even know her name. And then, of course, Sawyer, he makes a show, and my son David is a candidate for Sessions Judge down in Bradley County, and we're proud he came up today, and thanks to all of you for everything you do.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you join us in the well for a picture?
Welcome and honoring Representative Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, please join me to recognize that the month of April is Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. I rise to honor the staff and volunteers of CASA, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocacy. These loving people help children through difficult times for difficult periods of time. In Robertson County, we are blessed to have a strong CASA organization, and I think you do in your communities also. May God bless the staff, the volunteers, and the children that are part of the CASA community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Leader Lambert.
All right, well, tonight is a very, very special night for our family, and that is because I have my lovely bride, Lauren Lambert. Sweetheart, if you would stand up, y'all make her feel welcome. Thank you. And then we have 2 pages here tonight. I want you guys to work those yellow buttons, and that is my daughter, Allison, and my son, Pierce, going to be paging, so please make them feel welcome as well.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Harassment. Mr. Speaker and members, I want to stand up before you and wish a very dear person to me a very, very happy birthday. She is my school board commissioner, Stephanie Love. She is recovering from a stroke that she had a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago, and she's doing extremely well. I wanted to report that to you also. But happy birthday, School Board Commissioner Stephanie Love. Thank you.
Welcome and honoring. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction to resolutions.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar, referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing in line with the next be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills, Senate bills on first consideration.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the Senate bills 2,342 and 2,675 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of their companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House bills 2,914 and 2,915 be passed on second consideration and be held on the desk or referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentlemen, moves passage of the consent calendar, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, have any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, item 6, House Resolution 174. Item 6, House Resolution 174 has been objected to by Chairman Dixie.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Is every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Having received a constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Let the journal reflect Representative Halford is excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call it first bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2600 by Representative McKenzie and others relative to thresholds for competitive sealed bids. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk. Mr. Speaker, is previously considered and reset for today's regular calendar.
Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform with Senate Bill 2489.
Representative McKenzie moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2489, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2489 on third and final consideration.
Representative McKenzie moves passage of Senate Bill 2489 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will enable local governments to continue to provide effective and efficient local government operations while balancing those attributes with transparency and accountability. Tennessee's thresholds are substantially below national averages. What this bill would do is to increase those process for the competitive bid from 25,000 to 50,000, keeping up with inflationary numbers. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative McKenzie renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2489 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast a vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take a vote.
Ayes 82, 8 nays, 4 present, none voted.
Senate Bill 2489 not received constitutional majority. Hereby declare passed. Without objection. The motion for reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2705 by Representative Carringer and others, relative to regulation of certain products by governmental entities. Mr. Speaker, is previously considered, reset for today's regular calendar. The Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Carringer, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2219.
Representative Carringer moves substitute and form Senate Bill 2219, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2219 on third and final consideration.
Representative Carringer moves passage of Senate Bill 2219 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is similar to, but not the same as the Senate amendment, and I move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of House Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Leader Lamberth, Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Leader Lamberth, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this just adds a definition to cigar bars. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move passage.
Representative Lamberth moves adoption of amendment number 2, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Any objection to the question? We're on the board. All those in favor of amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Kumara. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 83, 7 nays, 2 present, unvoted.
Amendment number 2 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Carringer, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 2219 permits local governments to regulate by resolution or ordinance the use of vapor products and smoking in age-restricted venues that are not retail tobacco stores, retail vape shops, or cigar bars. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Carringer renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the sponsor. And I think you and I have kind of discussed some of my concerns on this, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. The issue that I always have with these types of bills is I think it ignores the rights of a private property owner. And so I know we're leaving it up to a local government whether or not they want to regulate smoking over 21 years of age, but that takes that right away from a private property owner or the private owner of a club who's established their business. They've made it their policy that they allow smoking. Now, if the public doesn't want to go to that establishment, they can vote with their feet and allow the free market to work. Where I have an issue is government stepping in and saying, no, we don't care that you own this property. We don't care that you own this club. We're not going to allow you to allow smoking. And so it's the rights of the private property owner that always concerns me when these types of legislation come up.
Representative Carringer.
And thank you to my colleague, and we have talked, and there's both sides to this, and musicians brought this bill to me, and it is giving them an opportunity because we are making it permissive for all local municipalities to make that decision. And so I was bringing it to protect musicians and our hospitality workers that are the only essential group in Tennessee that do not have a guarantee of a smoke-free workplace. And so, but thank you to my colleague.
Representative Cochran.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just one quick follow-up, and I understand that it's permissive for that local government. Again, just my issue is that it's not permissive for that private property owner. Again, I understand the part about musicians. Again, at the same time, their rights do not trump the rights of the person who owns that club, the person who put their livelihood at stake to start a business. And so, again, that's why I'm opposed, but with all due respect, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Chairman Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill. Like other members here, I was a bit hesitant about this bill at first, but this may actually be one of the most impactful bills, health-related bills that we passed this year, and it has a significant impact on hospitality workers and our musicians. I'll give you guys some statistics. Hospitality is 13% of our workforce. They average about $15.30 an hour, 27.8 hours per week. They're likely not insured, and they have this exposure to secondhand smoke. Now, let me tell you some of the risks for non-smokers with secondhand smoke. They increase the risk of developing heart disease by 25 to 30%. The non-smokers can increase the risk of developing lung cancer by 20 to 30% and increase the risk of smoke by 20 to 30%. You know, like when you first brought this bill, we put this through our process in the Health Committee, looked for ways that we could address this. And I would say that the way this bill is written, it does work. It is permissive, and it allows those locals to protect their hospitality workers from this secondhand smoke. We put restrictions on businesses all the time. You can't discriminate for certain things. And these are some people that are being discriminated against, and their livelihood is at risk. So again, this is one of the most impactful health-related bills that we have. I'm going to sign on to your bill, and I'd encourage others to vote for it. Thank you.
Representative Carringer.
I renew my motion, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2219 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, any member has changed their Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 56, 33 nays, 6 present unvoted.
Senate Bill 2219 has received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2675 by Leader Lamberth relative to General Assembly members. Mr. Speaker, was previously considered and reset for today's calendar.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I ask to roll this to Wednesday's regular calendar?
Without objection, roll the Wednesday's regular calendar. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2207 by Hicks of Washington relative to psychology. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2356.
Representative Hicks moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2356. Bobby second without objection. So ordered. Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2356 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hicks moves passage of Senate Bill 2356 on third and final consideration. Bobby second. Mrs. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, under Tennessee Board of Psychologists can issue a temporary license to an applicant who has successfully completed the academic coursework and training and who has not yet taken the written examinations. If an individual does not take and pass the exam during this postdoctoral year, then they can obtain a temporary license. This bill allows the applicant to take the examination a second time. If the applicant does not pass the examination a second time, then the license is revoked after 30 days of the second failure. This bill allows that during the 30-day period, the transfer of care of patient can be transferred. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Hicks renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2356, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2356, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2633, Representative Cochran and others, relative to student pronouns.
Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2633 on third and final consideration.
Representative Cochran moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2633 provides protection to public school districts and public school teachers if they choose to use pronouns based on a student's birth sex. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Cochran renews this motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative, you and this is, I think, the third time we've now debated this. So you probably have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to say, but I'd like the other members here to hear this as well. I'm still shocked that we would pass a bill that would allow someone with that much hate in their heart to disrespect students. And if a student decides that they want to be called whatever pronoun they want to be called, why would we allow a person whose sole role is to guide them, help them become the best version of themselves, support their decisions, to openly be able to disrespect them? This past weekend, my family, my kids performed in a dance recital, and there was a young man who got up and spoke. It was his last dance, and he got to talk about the impact the dance instructor had on his life, that this was the place that he felt whole, that he felt like he could be himself, that he had no idea his high school experience would be this way. And had it not been for those instructors supporting him in his dance, that it wouldn't have been the same way. And this bill allows people to disrespect students' decisions. Can you comment on why you think it's bad to not decide to use someone's pronouns that they choose to use?
Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I believe tolerance and respect go both ways. And teachers should not be forced to use a pronoun or express a message that violates their core beliefs. And so I believe teachers deserve respect as well.
Representative Freeman, out of order. Representative Freeman.
And what core belief would that be?
Representative Cochran.
Representative Freeman, I can't take you through every religious denomination or every core belief in the state or in the country, but I can tell you for sure that it can be against someone's core religious beliefs to acknowledge that.
Representative Freeman.
I just got to say, if your religion teaches you to dislike and hate kids, I think you should find a new religion. But thank you very much.
Representative Cochran.
No comment, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Previous question.
Previous question's been called. Is there objection? There's objection. We are on the board. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Hazelwood, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 70, 24 nays.
Previous question prevails. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2633 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk. Please take the vote.
Aye, 67, 25 nays.
House Bill 2633, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion for reconsideration is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2303 by Representative Cochran relative to insurance for county employees. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2294.
Representative Cochran moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2294, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2294 on third and final consideration.
Representative Cochran moves passage of Senate Bill 2294 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman
number 2.
Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill allows county governments and city governments to, actually it allows a practice that's taking place now to give an incentive to take your spouse's health insurance rather than the counties. It ends up saving local governments quite a bit of money. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Cochran renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? See none. Any objection to the question? See none. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2294 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As there are member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, no nays.
Senate Bill 2294, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion for reconsideration is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1386 by Chairman Todd relative to appointment of deputies and assistants. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 282.
Chairman Todd moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 282, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 282 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Todd moves passage of Senate Bill 282 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move this to the Hill amendments.
Without objection, roll to the Hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Farmer moves adoption of amendment number 2, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? See none. All those in favor of amendment number 2 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the body back to House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Todd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, can you tell me what kind of disputes this refers to?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill establishes some new procedures for resolving disputes related to the necessity of additional deputies and assistants for certain local government officials and the salaries thereof.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And why are we trying to limit these types of disputes? I didn't hear the reasoning for that. I'm sorry.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lot of our counties have experienced some big hits to their budgets related to disputes that arise from either the sheriff suing the county commission or a clerk suing the county commission for more money, more salaries, or salary increases. And this simply puts in place some guardrails that I think were intended in the original language when we passed many decades ago a law that prevented these officers from raising their own money, because that for a long time they were required to raise their own funds to fund their offices and their constitutional duties. So it's supposed to be an expedited process, but over the years it's become unexpedited, and this just puts some guardrails in place. I have worked for over a year with a number of judges, a number of attorneys that have worked on both sides of these cases, the Bar Association, and I believe I've gotten everyone comfortable and very satisfied with guardrails that help all parties in this. It helps those constitutional officers obtain the additional funds if they need it, but it also keeps the taxpayers from being hammered with enormous and exorbitant attorney fees and court costs.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What are the basis for these salary disputes? And also, to piggyback that question, does the Sheriff's Association support this bill?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And what generally, as I understand it, generates these lawsuits, and let's just take a sheriff, for example, if the sheriff puts in his budget that he wants raises for all of his employees, and the county commission decides they don't have that amount of money and they're going to give raises to half the employees, then the sheriff has this law at his disposal to sue the county commission for the additional funds to give the rest of those employees raises, and it would go before a judge. It's a court case at that point, civil suit. And this just simply puts in place some guidelines for judges to be able to keep these on track and keep them from going off the rails. As far as the associations that have supported this, the one you mentioned has been supportive of this. They brought some concerns last year and a little over a year ago, and we stopped the process and went back to the drawing board and got all of the parties involved on the same page, and have gotten through numerous iterations of this draft that you have before you.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 282 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change your vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 79, 13 nays.
Senate Bill 282 having received the constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2612 with Chairman Farmer relative to property. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2167.
Chairman Farmer moves substitute and form Senate Bill 2167, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2167 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Farmer moves passage of Senate Bill 2167 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman. Vice Chairman Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill, and I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for an explanation.
Vice Chairman Jernigan moves adoption of House Amendment number 1. Probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting House Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does, this just adds another tool in a judge's toolbox to deal with partition cases. And that means that folks can't agree what to do with property upon someone's death. They file a petition for partition with the courts, and the courts make the decision either A, you can agree to sell the property or how you want to sell it, or the court sends it to auction. Okay? This would allow the court to assign a value to evaluate that property in pieces. That way families could buy a certain piece of property if they're able to keep the property intact. But what this bill also does, there's about 82,000 heirs properties in the Southeast. And what that is, these are properties that are owned by multiple heirs, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 that's been in the families for generations. These are properties that have been farmed, that's been producing crops and food for Tennesseans and folks all across the country. This would allow the court to assign values and assign ownership to these properties, so banks can then lend money on these properties. Then these folks can go and get, the federal government passed the Farm Act, where you could go and get grants. These folks can continue farming, continue producing food for folks inside the United States and Tennessee and the Southeast, so we don't have to rely on other folks for food. So this bill does a lot for small families, maybe 3 or 4 heirs, all the way up to folks with 80 or 100 heirs. So with that explanation, Mr. Speaker and members, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I move passage.
Chairman Farmer renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? That's right. Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill. This is a problem that's occurred nationally. As you referenced, sometimes what will happen is these properties will get divided up, and someone will go out and buy a small portion, and they'll take that and essentially try to sell it, and that'll force all the other heirs, to have to give up their property and lose it. So this is really something that's going to help a lot of Tennesseans that are in this situation, and make sure that we protect those landowners that are put in this situation, and make sure that we're not working with unscrupulous people who are trying to impact land that's been in families for generations. So thank you for this bill. I'm glad it's going to pass. It's a good day for Tennessee, and it's a good day for farmers and landowners across the state. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2167 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, any member wish to change their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 2167 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most reconsidered table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2509 by Representative Grills and others relative to firearms. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2628.
Representative Grills moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2628 without objection. So ordered. Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for passage of Senate Bill 2628 on third and final consideration.
Representative Grills moves passage of Senate Bill 2628 on third and final consideration. Bobby second. Mr. Clerk, call up first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Representative Grills renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2628 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 87 nays.
Senate Bill 2628 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most reconsidered table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1855 by Representative Doggett and others relative to criminal law. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Leader Lamberth.
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker. It appears that I've been requested to roll this bill 2 spaces. I'll be happy to do so.
Without objection, roll 2 spaces. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1905 by Representative Doggett.
Let's try that again. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Roll this bill 2 places, please.
Without objection, roll 2 spots. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2877 by Chairman Todd relative to Human Rights Commission. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2774.
Chairman Todd moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2774, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2774 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Todd moves passage of Senate Bill 2774 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. We'll refer to the chairman for the further explanations. We move to adopt.
Chairman Kiesling moves adoption of House Amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting House Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Todd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor yield.
Chairman Todd.
Can you, what you, please?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I understood your question. The microphone cut off, but what this does, it makes some changes to the Human Rights Commission. A few of the changes, first of all, it's going to reset the board. It will vacate the board of the commission as it exists now on September 1 of this year. And then there will be new appointments to this commission, 3 by the Speaker of the Senate, 3 by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and 3 by the governor. Nothing prohibits them from reappointing some of the same members, if not all of the same members. It staggers their terms so that there's it kind of maintains a current situation where they're rolling off at certain times. And it prevents the commission from forming any kind of an internal committee that has more authority or power than the entire commission itself. All of these things are correcting some problems that we've discovered with this particular commission.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you.
Chairman Dixie.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague before me asked the question that I was going to ask, so thank you for your time.
Okay, very well. Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What's wrong with the current commission?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My first year in the General Assembly, I was faced with a situation from a local nonprofit in my community that had been visited by this commission. And trying to think how to put this tactfully, I was very frustrated to learn that a state agency would treat citizens of this state in the manner in which my constituents were treated. It was a racial issue. It's a racial allegation that was not true. I believe they even found it not to be true, but the director at that time demanded that something be done anyway. And so they began to force them to spend money and jump through a lot of hoops that didn't do anybody any good. And it really got my blood boiling to see how an agency that we set in motion in this body, we gave them authority and they have abused that authority with a number. And I found other representatives here that have had similar experiences in their own districts. And I set out to do something about it. I actually filed this caption bill this year in order to wind them down. They came and visited me and I gave them, we had a long conversation. I gave them a week to get back with me for some suggestions on what could be changed to alleviate my concerns. They never got back with me. So Senator Bell and I sat down with our attorneys and we started drafting what we felt would be a very reasonable course of action to, again, expose some wrongs that had been done in the past and set a new course for this commission and give them a chance to fulfill their obligation to the state that this legislature gave them without abusing our citizens.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I understand being frustrated if someone was accused or somebody you represent is accused wrongly of something. But I mean, we're blowing up the entire commission because you're upset over that single instance. So now we're going to vacate the entire commission, have the whole thing reformed and redo all the rules of this commission because of a single incident?
Representative Todd.
No, sir, maybe you didn't hear that part. I have spoken with many other representatives. I've spoken with past commissioners of this commission, and the consensus has been that this has been off the rails for some time and it needs to be corrected. And this is probably the mildest way of correcting it at this point. And I think we'll see how they perform after this.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you. And who appoints the commission today? So who appointed the people that have taken this commission off the rails?
Representative Todd.
I have not looked at the entire history over the last 6 or 8 years, 10, to see what the appointments are. That's just not been my purpose in this.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hardaway at Chairman Dixie's desk.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, I wish I'd had time to speak with you about this beforehand. And we've had some conversation last year about, and the year before last, I believe, about the issues in the incident that you're describing. The purpose and mission of the Human Rights Commission involves complaints in reference to discrimination. You'd agree?
Representative Todd.
I certainly agree that is part of their mission, if not all of it. And they are basically our representatives from the state level doing what the federal government has set out to do and can do. We don't even need this commission, quite frankly. They could not exist tomorrow and federal laws would still dictate what goes on in those discrimination cases.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. And I would respectfully disagree on whether we need a state human rights commission or not. We've had one since I've been here, had one before I got here. And I've worked with them. I've seen them do investigations. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. But one thing I don't do is interfere because I think the objectivity of the workers who are long-term career employees and their sense of independence is important when we're addressing these type of situations. I've had employers come to me on issues, and I've made it clear to them, I don't get inside of that type of department work. That's why we have that department. That's why we have an appeals process. And as far as I know, it's been working effectively. And I have to agree with the previous speaker that when we start to dismantle and disrupt a system that's supposed to be geared towards justice, equity, equality, that helps employers and employees, because employers can sometimes learn how to be better employers. And I've worked with the commission and seen how they actually carry that out. Does your bill do anything to enhance that part of the mission or to impair that part of the mission? How does your bill in the reconstitution address that issue?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This doesn't change what they do on a daily basis. It just changed some oversight to make sure that they're doing what we charge them to do. I would remind you and the members that the people out there, according to our Constitution, the people out there are in charge. They run this place. They elect each one of us, give us the honor to come up and represent them. We then appoint certain commissions, agencies, and departments to do the work of the legislature. When they get out of line and are not doing the work we told them to do, that's when it's our responsibility on behalf of the citizens to step in and get it corrected. And that's what this bill seeks to do, sir.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. And I'll respectfully disagree that anyone over there was, well, not anyone, but the agency as a whole, collectively, was out of line. I think they fulfilled their mission. I think they did a fine job doing it. And I hate to think that they're going to be intimidated into not doing their job, not helping employers and employees to be better Americans. And I'm sorry that we're taking this heavy-handed approach, and hopefully they'll be able to survive what in essence is really a slap to them and to the mission that they're about. But as you said, there's also, at the end of the day, there's also going to be opportunities, and we need to make this clear to those who are listening. If they're not satisfied, there's also options that involve the courts. There's also options that involve the federal government and their investigation into matters of discrimination. So I thank you for listening to me, but I respectfully disagree with you on this particular approach of this bill. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What's the change in the appointing authority under this bill?
Representative Todd.
As was previously stated, it changes from 5 currently for the governor and 4 for the General Assembly to 3 for the governor, 3 for the Speaker of the House, and 3 for the Speaker of the Senate.
Representative Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, here's why I think this bill is particularly bad government.
You and I could agree or disagree about the makeup of a commission, how it's structured, but really all you're doing is just erasing the appointments of one governor and putting a new group in. And you've said here on the floor, you're doing it essentially as retaliation for what this body did to one citizen. And maybe you've heard from others. But you know, the reason we have these boards is to provide an independent voice to use judgment and make decisions. We have all sorts of boards that this body has made. If we get in the habit of reconstituting these boards in response to a particular board action, we're essentially eliminating the purpose of the boards. As others have said, you're going to completely destroy the independence of the boards because the boards are going to act under the shadow of the legislature reaching down and reconstituted them. It reminds me of what used to be done in municipal law, where this body, way back in the day, would unwisely reconstitute municipal governments to satisfy little petty grievances among local authorities. That was bad government. And I think this is really bad government here today, not just because of the particular commission that you are silencing and penalizing, but more broadly, all of our commissions. This is a particularly unwise bill. And I think you stated directly that your intent is exactly the sort of intent that we should not be exercising on this floor.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last speaker just incorrectly summarized my words. I think all of you heard what they were. This is not about retaliation. This is about correction. When an agency of this state does things that are contrary to law, contrary to what the citizens' freedoms and liberties granted to them by God are infringed upon, that's when we as representatives have to step in and say, that's enough. You are to go a different direction. That's all this is. Thank you.
Representative Stewart.
Well, we can describe it however we want. You're a businessman. There are a lot of business people in this body. And when you've got an entity and you've got board members and you go in and you throw out all the board members and put in new board members, you can tell them it's a correction or you can tell them it's retaliation. It really doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're eliminating the independent functioning of that board. So not only are we doing that with probably the most important board of its kind we have in the state, addressing probably our most consequential issue in terms of how it directly affects Tennesseans, but we're also creating a precedent that will have a chilling effect on all of these boards, where we expect our wisest and most effective citizens to preserve various rights and opportunities for Tennesseans. So, sir, I have to say this is a particularly misguided bill. I didn't misrepresent what you said. I directly stated what you said on the floor, which is you're doing this because you don't like the decision of this body. Well, go talk to the governor, go talk to the appointing authorities, change it over time under its current statute. We don't want to just wander in every time we're disappointed with a board and reconstitute it. That's what you're doing. It's not good government.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Boards, commissioners, departments, agencies are not independent at all. They exist at the will of this legislature. It is our job to make sure they do their job for the citizens that elect us here.
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question been called. Any objection? See none. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2774 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Is there a member cast your vote? Is there a member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 67, 28 nays.
Senate Bill 2774 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the body back to item 10, House Bill 1905 by Chairman Doggett and others relative to drug overdoses. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize. Item 10 is House Bill 1855 by Chairman Doggett relative to criminal law. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1792.
Let the journal reflect Representative Gillespie's excuses. Chairman Doggett moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1792, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1792 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Doggett moves passage of Senate Bill 1792 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 is in the Senate bill. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What we're doing is clarifying current penalties for continuous sexual abuse of a child. We're not changing the penalties, but we're writing this section to simplify it. A substantive change of this amendment or this bill makes to the current code is the addition of 2 offenses of definition of sexual abuse of a child under the continuous sexual abuse of a child. Those 2 offenses are human trafficking for commercial sex act under TCA 3913-309 and promoting prostitution pursuant to 3913-515 if the victim is a minor. With that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Doggett renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1792 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member cast your vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Senate Bill 1792, I received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed. I object to the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, item 11, House Bill 1905 by Chairman Doggett relative to drug overdoses. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1891.
Chairman Doggett moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1891, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1891 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Doggett moves passage of Senate Bill 1891 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 restricts the application of this bill to fatal drug overdoses to the extent allowed by state and federal law. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Curcio moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting House Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Doggett renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 1891 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member casts votes, any member wish to change your vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Bill 1891 and received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, item 12 has already been disposed of by the body. That brings us back to item 13, House Bill 2312 by Representative Griffey relative to the General Assembly. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Griffey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2299.
Representative Griffey moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2299, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2299 on third and final consideration.
Representative Griffey moves passage of Senate Bill 2299 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Griffey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what Senate Bill 2299 would do would allow members of the General Assembly to have access to testing materials that our students are taking in schools so that we can make an appropriate evaluation as to the effectiveness of the test and the rules that will be passed by the Department of Education to protect the integrity of the testing system. I move passage.
Representative Griffey renews the motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2299 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member casts votes, anyone wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 69, 25 nays.
Senate Bill 2299, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2531 by Chairman Ramsey relative to professional counsels, marital and family therapists, and clinical pastoral therapists. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Ramsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2694.
Chairman Ramsey moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2694, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2694 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Ramsey moves passage of Senate Bill 2694 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Ramsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this bill changes certain requirements for professional counselors seeking licensure, allows for a temporary license to be valid for up to 4 years. And that, with that explanation that it deals with our current crisis in counselors in the United States, I would renew my motion.
Chairman Ramsey renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2694 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, nays 2 present, unvoting.
Senate Bill 2694 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2228 by Chairman Ramsey and others relative to prescription requirements.
Chairman Ramsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2228 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Ramsey moves passage, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Ramsey, you're recognized.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is requires a health care prescriber to offer a prescription for opioid antagonist or similar FDA-approved drug to a patient who's prescribed an opioid that meets certain criteria. I've been asked to explain and maintain the issue here that this only offers a prescription, and it's up to the patient to get that filled or not. It does not demand either one. So with that explanation, I would renew my motion.
Chairman Ramsey renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Griffey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this, Chairman Ramsey. Here's my concern with this bill. We've got folks that are having Noxalone parties in my district and overdosing on drugs and then bringing themselves back, making a party out of it. Is this bill going to enable them to do that more effectively and easier?
Chairman Ramsey. Chairman Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, at the current time, back when the opioid epidemic became such a situation in Tennessee, and we have 52 fatal overdoses in Tennessee and compare it to per 100,000 people in comparison to other states that only have 30. What the situation is Tennessee actually has an over-the-counter with collaborating pharmacies that anybody that wants to get this antagonist can do that. And what we are seeing is that nobody seems to want to get this material. So what this is for specific people that are under certain criteria that makes them an elevated risk. And in discussing the issue with law enforcement and medical officers, I'm told that it's very, very profound when you use Narcan to correct and stop an overdose. It's very profound. The people have many side effects. They have certain issues that makes them incapable of partying, as you would say, in continuation from what they had started after the overdose. So this would in no way make it easier. You can already get it over the counter. This would not make it easier, and would not make it more likely that people would abuse it to further their drug activities. With that explanation, sir, I'd remove my motion.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I noticed that under the amendment that was just recently or previously adopted, the fiscal note is not significant. Who will be paying for this Narcan as a part of this prescription?
Chairman Ramsey.
That will be the patient. Insurance pays for it as well as TennCare. So what we found is that actually the cost is not prohibitive, and I think we had a previous bill that dealt with people that were under treatment at current time that had no insurance. It's a totally different population. This is a population that is covered and would be seeking medical care.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will there be a limit as to how many doses of Narcan that they will be prescribed? Is it one or is it multiple? How does that work?
Chairman Ramsey.
And thank you for the question. The issue now is there's no limit. When Narcan first became a factor in dealing with drug overdoses in any state, the Department of Health commissioner actually wrote a prescription and has collaborating pharmacies that you can get this on request. So to my knowledge, typically law enforcement officers will try to keep multiple doses. And my understanding is that you can the pharmacies can provide multiple doses. The issue is that when we question the pharmacies, they say that people are actually not buying this over the counter. And so this is just an effort to try to provide and give a little more access to the public, the people that are in perilous situations, especially.
Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Ramsey, it just seems like to me that, look, nobody wants anybody to overdose and lose their life by doing opioids, fentanyl, or whatever it is. But the problem to me, it seems like that what we're going to do is set up a system where the Tennessee taxpayers who aren't using drugs are going to be funding free Narcan for folks that want to get it, and they're going to have it just in case they have an overdose episode. So what it seems like to me, we're actually setting up a system where people that, in my instance, that I've got, reports of having Narcan parties where they OD on fentanyl and opioids or whatever it is, and they, bring their buddies back from, death with the Narcan, that we're going to be encouraging that. So that's my concern, and I wish you would address that, please. Thank you.
Chairman Ramsey.
And thank you, sir, for the question. The issue is typically when we have a drug overdose, typically the expense at an emergency room is $6,000. The Narcan treatment is $75. And so my estimation is, and from the healthcare providers and law enforcement that I talk to, it's far more a burden to the taxpayers to have people using drugs going into an emergency situation than it is to have law enforcement or medical offices or medical prescriptions or over-the-counter supplies of Narcan available. So expense-wise, you can see that there's no significant expense on this issue.
Representative Curcio.
Thank you,
Hang
Mr.
on. One sec, my fault, I went out of order. Representative Shaw is first, then Curcio. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call for the question on the bill.
All right, question's been called. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2228 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 56, nay, one present, not voted.
House Bill 2228, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reeks here is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2585 by Chairman Rudd and others relative to elections. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2675.
Chairman Rudd moves substitute and form Senate Bill 2675, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Rudd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2675 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Rudd moves passage of Senate Bill 2675 on third and final consideration, probably second. And Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the bill comes from the Secretary of State. It expands existing automatic audit provisions in the law. 3 counties would be automatically audited at random every August, and 6 counties every November elections selected by Secretary of State's office. The staff of the division that would be carrying this out would be go under U.S. Government Accountability Office training. Those 35 counties that currently have optical scanners, which require an automatic audit, will remain unchanged. It also sets up a pilot program in Williamson County. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Rudd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Hardaway at Chairman Dixie's desk.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, you mentioned the pilot program. Is this targeted towards the pilot program or towards all elections.
Chairman Rudd.
This would be the same coordinating, Representative Whitson recently passed a pilot program. This is it. It was actually in this legislation, word for word. Just in case this failed or disappeared somewhere in the budget, we got a funding letter for it. That's so that pilot program could survive. If you have any questions on that, Representative Whitson could ask that, but it's the same exact wording of the pilot program we've already passed.
Representative Hardaway.
All right, thank you for that. And the rest of the audit process that's set out, what initiated that? What initiated the need for the bill?
Chairman Rudd.
Thank you for that question. As you know, we have always consistently among the top 3 most secure elections in the entire state. This past election, we didn't have any complaints lodged anywhere at any level. We have had a continuing efforts to stay ahead of the curve and make sure our system remains secure. And after this past election, it brought some things to the forefront that we didn't have audit provisions in the state. So we're going to conduct some random audits. Now, we already had a law of optical scanners. It was already built in the law we had already passed years ago that those optical scanners would automatically have audits. That remains, but we didn't have audit provisions for the rest of the machines that we use. And this would be random audits in August and November so that we can make sure we have a solid election.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. And the audits will be random, chosen in what manner?
Chairman Rudd.
Thank you. The Secretary of State has said would choose those randomly. There's no set particular way he chooses them. They would be, I imagine, large and small counties. That would be up to him how he chooses them. There would be, again, it would be 3 audits for the August election randomly, and within each county, random precincts would be chosen randomly. And for the November election, 6 counties would be randomly selected using the same method. Also, if there was an election of a variance of 1%, then that would automatically trigger a hand count of at least 3% of the voting precincts in that county.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. And you've given a pretty good explanation of the bill. Is there anything in here, Mr. Sponsor, which speaks to student IDs as voter IDs?
Chairman Rudd. Chairman Rudd.
That's not a part of the bill.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Sponsor, thank you for bringing this bill because I want to continue to undo the messaging that some of your colleagues try to portray that Democrats are not for election security. We are absolutely for election security, and this is an election security bill. I'll be voting for it. Don't be surprised. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Rudd, anything? You're good? Chairman Rudd.
Motion.
All right, he renews motion. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2675, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, as a member votes, change their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 2675, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reads serious table. File next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 681 by Representative Beck, relative to taxation.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to roll this to Wednesday's calendar, please.
Without objection, roll to Wednesday. File next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2448 by Representative Beck, relative to qualified public use facilities. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2313.
Representative Beck moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2313, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2313 on third and final consideration.
Representative Beck moves passage of Senate Bill 2313 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Finance, Ways and Means Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a local bill where the African American Music Museum at Fifth and Broad would be able to have a 5% tax on their tickets. And I invite everyone to go and check out the African American Museum. It's an amazing museum, and it's well worth your time and worth the ticket price. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Beck renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2313 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, any member wish to change your vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 60, 30 nays, 1 present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 2313 and received constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed without objection. Motion for serious take. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1667 by Chairman Whitson, relative to Tennessee State Library Coordinator.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1667 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Whitson moves passage, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1667 will create a Tennessee State Library Coordinator in the Department of Education. The coordinator will assist school librarians as they implement the department's policy, including the reconsideration policy requirements of our Age-Appropriate Materials Act of 2022 at LEAs with limited library staff or coordinators. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Whitson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Rudd.
Mr. Sponsor, will this in any way affect the Secretary of State's control of the libraries and the way it is currently?
Chairman Whitson.
No, not as written.
Representative Rudd.
Thank you. Just wanted to verify that. Thank you.
Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could you please describe the digital citizenship initiatives as part of the bill that was?
Chairman Whitson.
Yes, thank you. That is to encourage students to make sure that they go and use materials to find information on citizenship and the U.S. government and the agencies to make sure that it's appropriate, age-appropriate materials.
Representative Griffey. Any further discussion? Representative Spicki.
Thank you. And to the sponsor, is there anything in the bill, I'm trying to scan through this quickly, that requires the department to hire a school librarian to act in this position from the state of Tennessee, or can they go outside the state anywhere they want to hire this librarian?
Chairman Whitson.
This legislation does not restrict this Department of Education on how they hire or retain employees.
Representative Spicki.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? See none. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1667 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays, 2 present, not voting.
House Bill 1667 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2519 by Representative Sexton and Granger relative to county purchasing. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2352.
Representative Sexton moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 2352, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2352 on third and final consideration.
Representative Sexton moves passage of Senate Bill 2352 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is it just raises the limit from 10,000 to 25,000 on road departments, county road departments that want to purchase certain things, and it hasn't been changed since 2005. And so this bill would kind of bring it into the inflation and raw materials today that we're having problems finding. So I renew my motion.
Representative Sexton renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2352, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member cast vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Camper. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, 1 nay.
Senate Bill 2352 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2147 by Chair Lady Moody and others relative to criminal law. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2400.
Chair Lady Moody moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2400, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chair Lady Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2400 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Moody moves passage of Senate Bill 2400 on third and final consideration, probably second. Ms. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1 is not in the Senate bill, and the amendment makes the bill. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1 and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Kershaw moves adoption of House Amendment Number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting House Amendment Number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Ms. Clark.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'd like to, first of all, give acknowledgement on this bill to Governor Lee for his interest and his strong support of our efforts in Tennessee to fight the trafficking issue. And also, I can't help but remember the late Representative Jim Coley and his leadership and work on this issue. I believe he would be up here carrying this bill if he were still here with us. But in his stead, I would like to give you this explanation for this bill. And what it does, it addresses several factors related to the survivors of human trafficking and especially victims of commercial sexual exploitation of a minor. What we're trying to do here, there's an international group called Shared Hope, and they set the standard for the different states on how tough their trafficking laws are. And so Tennessee has been blessed with the work of our TBI, law enforcement, and so many others to be number one most of the time. And so they have reset their rubric. And so what we are trying to do is to update several of these sections of our laws to help get us back into that number one position. With that, I will renew my motion.
Chair Lady Moody renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2400 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member cast vote, assume members change their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 2400 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Let journal reflect. Representative Travis is excused. Call Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2152 by Representative Hicks of Washington, relative to Tennessee Education Lottery Scholarship Programs. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Hicks, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2405.
Representative Hicks moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2405. Properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2405 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hicks moves passage of Senate Bill 2405 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker. It's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment number 1, so I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 2.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 2. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 2 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 3.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 3 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2152 is the Give Hope Expansion Act of 2022. This bill is about expanding new opportunities to students from the ages of 16 to 24. Currently, millions of young adults in this age group is neither working nor enrolled in school, a group often referred to as opportunity youth. 12.6 of Tennesseans 16 to 24 fit into this category. There's an estimated 30,000 opportunity youth in Memphis alone. This bill encourages the Tennessee College of Applied Technology to establish technical middle college programs in partnerships with LEAs that permit students to earn an advanced technical certificate and a diploma by high school graduation. Students have the opportunity to graduate with post-secondary credits and a nationally recognized technical certificates from a variety of industries and develop employability skills such as problem solving, project completion, research, communication, time management, and critical thinking. The bill expands the dual enrollment grant and will be available beginning in a student's freshman year of high school. House Bill 2152 also expands the Hope non-traditional scholarship eligibility from 25 to 24. The bill increases the 2-semester awards to $4,400 for students their freshman and sophomore years and $5,700 for students their junior and senior years. This award hasn't been changed since 2008. This bill also allows students that completes their first bachelor degree to continue to receive the scholarship. The bill increases the Hope Scholarship Award to 2-year community colleges from $3,000 to $3,200. This bill amends the foster child tuition grant to align with foster child requirements for federal aid programs and lowers the age to 13. This bill also helps close the gaps for students, expanding access to Tennessee Reconnect grants to students who are 23 years of age. This expands eligibility to approximately 3,200 students. Let me share a real-life story, something that means something. When I was growing up, my father not only told me, but he told lots of my friends, a quote, "If you learn a trade, you will always have a job." I learned not only one trade, but I learned many trades. Heavy equipment operator, carpenter, electrician, laying block, anything to do with building a home, I learned it. By the age of 27, I built my own home with my own hands. Now here's what's interesting. When life threw me a curve and addiction took over, having a trade and something I could do and do well helped save my life. My trade helped me feel better about myself, helped me keep my self-esteem, and gave me what I needed to get back on my feet. Now, I work with a lot of folks with the same struggles, And many of them they don't have a trade. They don't have something to help them feel better about themselves. And it's a lot tougher for them. This bill will help fill the gap with students that needs it the most. I want to thank the governor for this legislation, and I want to thank you all. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Hicks renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Hicks, thank you for being so real about life and so honest about how your life and the roads that you've had to travel have been. This is a great bill. I got to give it to you. You're like an all-star to me. You've been bringing some really, really good legislation this year. I really appreciate what you're doing. And thank you again for bringing the legislation.
Representative Sparks.
Just wanted to thank the sponsor for what Parkinson said, just being real. The other day, we showed that movie, Hope Lives in Hohenwald, and it really was about the drug problem and turning lives around. And you came up here and gave an inspiring speech to some of these guys who had been in jail and turned their life around, and they wasn't expecting hear that from a state lawmaker. But just 3 weeks ago, a young boy was stabbed and murdered that done some construction for me. I think he had a drug problem, couldn't beat it. Seen another boy about 2 years ago, overdose, fentanyl. We had another overdose at Sonic, young student, passed away. I think this conversation we've had tonight, this piece of legislation is probably one of the most important bills that we'll probably pass this year. So going back to what a good friend from Shelby County said, thank you for keeping it real, sir. Appreciate your bill.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2405 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays, one present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2405 and received constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The most for series tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1747 by Representative Jernigan and others relative to qualifying medical diagnosis for the use of medical cannabis.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1747 on third and final consideration.
Representative Jernigan moves passage. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Where am I? I move passage. Oh, wait, I'm recognized from the bill. All right, members. House Bill 1747 adds quadriplegia to the list of qualifying medical conditions that's listed under TCA 687201. This will allow the Medical Cannabis Commission to study the effects and give lawful possession of cannabis oil to Tennesseans with quadriplegia. The current diagnoses on the list are Alzheimer's, ALS, cancer, Crohn's, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, HIV, and sickle cell. Adding quadriplegia to the list can help in the most common side effects of living with quadriplegia: severe muscle spasms, chronic pain, overactive bladders, and insomnia. Members, I live with this diagnosis every day, and I'm in a chair sometimes 12 to 14 hours a day. At that point in time, I can receive severe muscle spasms that's really stressful on my body. It leads to insomnia. I've exhausted all conventional treatments that are out there. I don't smoke marijuana. I don't get high. That's not the intention to this. Law enforcement is deferred on this bill. And with that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Jernigan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I want to thank you for bringing the bill. Out of all the men on this floor, you may be the most courageous man on this floor. For all that you've had to endure, and we appreciate you testifying and telling us the kind of challenges. Many of us have been behind on this issue. And I think it's high time that we really, really allow medical marijuana to be something that is utilized for the benefit of our people in this state of Tennessee. I'd hope that you've had unanimous support on this particular bill. And if not, we just have to keep fighting to make sure we can allow our people to do what's necessary, take care of themselves, take care of their children, take care of their families. And it's scientifically been proven that this helps with the pain. It helps with some of the things that's going on with the cancer patients. It helps for a lot of conditions that we have in this country. And we need to be, the people many times are ahead of us. We need to come on with it and catch up and approve the things that can benefit our people. So thank you again. Good bill.
Representative Jernigan.
Thank you for your comments.
Representative Sexton of Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to agree with Representative Towns. I think you're a courageous individual. You come here as much as we do, and you have more of a challenge than we do. The substance that we're talking about, any substance that we use, and everything that God has made on this green earth, He made it to benefit us. He made it for us to use for our need and our benefit. It's not necessarily what we do, but what we do with it and why. So I'm sure that all of you know that I vote against alcohol bills, but I want to read you a verse in the Bible that talks about alcohol. It says, "Give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that are of heavy hearts." This bill that you have is a bill that would make your life easier, or at least gives you the right to try. And I'm with you 100%, because I believe God made things for good. I appreciate you. I appreciate your hard work, and I'll be voting for your bill.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of questions for you. So this is legalizing some products that are currently federally illegal. Would that be a correct statement?
Representative Jernigan.
If you're referring that cannabis oil will be a Schedule 1, that would be correct.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So you've confirmed my statement. Does this require a prescription for these substances?
Representative Jernigan.
It is not.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does it require the dispensary of these products to be a lawfully licensed facility with lab protocols like we do our pharmacies and our pharmaceuticals?
Representative Jernigan.
That's what? So we don't, I'm sorry, I just wanted to confirm that. So we don't have a dispensary in the state.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would it require these products to come from a pharmaceutical avenue where things are tested by lab, verified by lab, and proven to be truthful, whatever's on the label?
Representative Jernigan.
That would depend on which state that you got it from. Each state would have different, and again, I'm adding this diagnosis to what is already currently in state law of Tennessee. It's laid out there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it would not require a person to obtain this from a reputable source. They could get it from wherever they wanted to order it from that might be selling it, and again, not know what in the world they're actually putting in their bodies.
Representative Jernigan.
Well, if you consider what a state is a reputable source or not, it depends on what state they got it from. But I think any state that is doing this would consider themselves a reputable source.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When folks in this state go to the medicine cabinet, they've got labels, they've got prescriptions for things that are medicinal. And what you're proposing is expanding the ability for folks to use something for medicinal purposes that has not been proven, that has not been legalized even on a federal level. So it's illegal already. And legalizing something like that is just beyond something I can support, especially knowing that under the current Federal Farm Act that we had a few years ago that legalized hemp and hemp products, and also the state law that we revised that legalized hemp products, and the fact that every single component that a person needs from cannabis can be obtained from hemp, a legal product, without having to go down to another level of illegal substances. So I can't support this because of that fact. And folks can get these products already that's derived from hemp. And if it's lab proven and lab tested, I mean, they can do a lot of things in the lab. If someone wanted to go down the avenue of even proposing to legalize hemp products that have been concentrated and work on the percentages for THC, if there's proof that that does help medicinal qualities of the cannabis oil, then that might be a different discussion. But what we're doing here, what you're asking us to do is to approve an expansion of, again, a product that is federally illegal, and I just can't support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Jernigan.
Thank you. And I understand that, but the state, in the limited scope, the state has passed this. We're going to add this diagnosis to that. And I'm going to go and say, because I'm sure you're a firm believer in the 10th Amendment. So if Tennessee wants to do it, we should give it a shot.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's call a question.
Previous question has been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1747, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 77, 14 nays, 3 present, unvoted.
House Bill 1747 has received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reconsiders tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2329 by Chairman Curcio, relative to the Tennessee Personal and Commercial Computer Act of 2003. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Curcio, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2796.
Chairman Curcio moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2796, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Curcio, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2796 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Curcio moves passage of Senate Bill 2796 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Sexton, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 is in the Senate bill. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move to withdraw House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Curcio, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Curcio renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2796, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts their vote, any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2796 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsiders tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2102 by Chairman Curcio, relative to expunction. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Curcio, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2001.
Chairman Curcio moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2001, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Curcio, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2001 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Curcio moves passage of Senate Bill 2001 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Sexton, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 is in the Senate bill. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move to withdraw House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Curcio, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Curcio renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 2001, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2001 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection to the most read series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2316 by Chairman Reagan and others relative to participation in athletics. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bills on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2153.
Chairman Reagan moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 2153. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2153 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 2153 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment number 1. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill prohibits males from participating in public secondary and higher education sports that are designated for females. It applies to middle school, high school, and post-secondary school levels. In short, the new emphasis is intercollegiate teams designated for females, women, or girls will not be open to students of the biological male sex. It does not apply to co-ed or mixed sports. The determination of sex is as listed on the student's original birth certificate. Injunctive relief and court cost relief are found within this bill. Student and or guardian will be reimbursed for the court cost and attorney fees if responsibility is found to be on the school's part for getting the injunction. In summary, biological males must compete against biological males, not biological females. For millennia, this has been common sense for fairness and safety. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Griffey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objection? All right. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no on previous question. As every member voted, any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 66, 21 nays, 1 present, not voted.
Previous question prevails. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2153 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 70, 14 nay, 2 present, not voted.
Senate Bill 2153 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most read series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2246 by Chairman Vaughn relative to development. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bills on the desk.
Chairman Vaughn, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2077.
Chairman Vaughn moves substitute and form Senate Bill 2077, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2077 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Vaughn moves passage of Senate Bill 2077 on third and final consideration, probably second. Ms. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Bracken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment number 1 rewrites the bill. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for a colorful explanation.
Vice Chairman Bracken moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adoption of House Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure, which includes pipelines, terminals, and pump stations, are essential to ensure affordable, reliable, and sustainable fuel and industrial materials are available to support Tennessee's economy and the day-to-day demand to meet local and state transportation and manufacturing needs. This infrastructure extends well beyond the boundaries of any single local government. This legislation is necessary to ensure consumer choice will not be limited and that markets rather than governments are driving the future energy innovations and that all Tennessee citizens have access to affordable and reliable energy. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, let me say a complex patchwork of local government regulations will put this delivery system at risk. So therefore, I renew my motion.
Chairman Vaughn renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Miller, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is this more than just a study? Because I was reading where it's a study.
Chairman Vaughn.
Yes, sir. It's more than a study. Amendment 1 reflects that. It
Representative Miller.
rewrote the bill.
So could we explain again Amendment number 1, exactly what it does?
Chairman Vaughn.
Amendment number 1 prevents a single government. It's basically a preemption bill that does not allow governments to prohibit the delivery mechanism of any type for fossil fuels. Energy delivery systems typically are linear in nature. This would allow one government, one local political subdivision may express their beliefs and views and basically hinder another. So what this does is this sets guidelines for that delivery system. Let me tell you what it doesn't do. What it doesn't do is it does not prohibit local governments from influencing those decisions in that matter. It preserves the right of zoning to exist. What it does, it also allows for wellhead protection and environmental concerns to be addressed. It just basically stops a local government from prohibiting a delivery mechanism for energy. It tells them, as opposed to you saying, this can't exist anywhere, it says, this is where it will exist and how it will exist.
Representative Miller.
Now that state government, local government has that right, what this bill will do will give state government that right.
Chairman Vaughn.
Is that I didn't reflect that. I didn't understand that to be a question. But again, if you'd like me to, Representative Miller, I'll be happy to read you what is not covered by this bill. It does not prevent or preempt, and I'll skip some of them, but I'll read the ones I think are critical to the discussion. A local action that is state authorized, ministerial in nature pertaining to land use, generally applicable to similar types of commercial and industrial activities and necessary to provide a public benefit. That basically says that zoning, local zoning is not preempted. And as a result of this, with regards to that preemption, what it does is it says you've got to provide a place for these to exist in your community because they're important not only to your community, to another community. You just can't outlaw, but you can, whether you put it under a conditional use permit or whatever process you use in your zoning ordinances, you can still influence and have a say over it.
Representative Miller.
So to try to make this less complicated, we are transferring responsibility and the right of local government in making a decision to prohibit. We're transferring that power, that responsibility from one entity to the next. Who are we transferring that power? What entity? Is it going from local government to state government? That's my question.
Chairman Vaughn.
That is correct.
Representative Miller.
Thank you.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. Actually, I'm going to yield to Representative Cooper. If you would come back to me after Rep. Cooper, please.
Well, we don't defer. I can put you back on the list. So you can go now, or you got 6 spots. Representative Hardaway.
I'll wait for spot 7, sir. I'm going to
All right.
defer to Rep. Cooper.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question's been called. I'm sure there's objections, so we'll just go on the board. I got it. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Has any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 62, 31 nays.
Previous question prevails. We are voting.
Yes.
We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2077 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 68, 25 nays.
Senate Bill 2077 having received constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 751 by Chair Lady Moody and others relative to education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bills on the desk.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1158.
Chair Lady Moody moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1158, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1158 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Moody moves passage of Senate Bill 1158 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized. Oh, sorry. Where are we? Vice Chair Weaver, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Representative Mitchell. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to the hill of the amendments.
We are at the hill of the amendments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a simple little amendment. In fact, I had this as a bill this year, and it got a majority vote in the subcommittee, but it was not allowed to come out of the subcommittee with a majority vote. Unlike other bills that had the same vote in that subcommittee that had lost the previous year, my bill got raised to a higher standard than another bill that came out the same way. My bill is a simple little bill. It helps correct a big mistake that obviously we're still paying for day after day in this state. And my amendment just removes vouchers from the Tennessee law. It abolishes the voucher bill. It corrects something that we've been paying for, we'll continue to pay for in this state. Hopefully, greatly, some will pay greatly for that bill. But this is a simple little amendment that just abolishes the voucher bill. And maybe we can start a clean slate and start cleaning up some things in this state and make things right again. Thank you.
Would you like to move to adopt that amendment?
Move to adopt.
Very good. Representative Mitchell moves adoption of amendment number 2, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that this program already exists and we're adding dyslexia as one of the qualifiers to help these children that may not be in a setting where they can succeed. I think it's one of the most important things we do here. Students learn differently. They can maybe learn well over here. They may well learn over here, but they're always not going to learn the same way. This program provides kids that suffer from dyslexia. I had folks in my district that's not political reach out to me and say, can you support this legislation? My child suffers from this, and you know, the standard idea of a classroom setting in our public schools may not be the most appropriate place. They have no other alternative. No other alternative. So I think it's important that we as a state use every single tool that we can to make sure those kids, the ones that are most vulnerable, succeed in the classroom. So Chairman Moody, I'm so thankful that you brought this legislation. It's that reason alone that I think this legislation is so important, Mr. Speaker. With that, I move this amendment to the table.
Proper motion, probably second in parliamentary situations. Representative Mitchell has moved adoption of amendment number 2. Representative Garrett has moved that motion to the table. That cuts off all debate except for that of the sponsor. Representative Mitchell, you are recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, with all due respect to the previous speaker, I don't know what that was in regards to my amendment, but that had nothing to do with my amendment whatsoever. My amendment is the voucher bill that was illegally said that it passed on this House floor. What he's speaking of is the the vouchers for children that no one uses this voucher bill because federal law grants these children a whole lot more rights and benefits than this bill would. This bill that's before you, I mean, it's cutting the benefits to children with dyslexia or the other things that are in that bill way down. So no parent would even choose that. But my bill is more or less an ethics bill, trying to clean up a little corruption we've had in this House in years past, and it's trying to get rid of the voucher bill and start anew, start fresh in this state, and let's do things proper and in the right way in the future. So with that being said, I renew my motion.
Parliamentary situations that Representative Mitchell has moved adoption of amendment number 2. Representative Garrett has moved that motion to the table. We are voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Moon's an aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 63, 27 nays.
The ayes have it. The motion to adopt amendment number 2 is tabled. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Moody, Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just simply, this is the Individual Education Savings Account Program that is currently housed with our Department of Education. It's been implemented for 7 years, and we are simply adding, if this passes, we are adding dyslexia to the list. With that, I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Moody renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Reagan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question has been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1158, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Powell, no. Moon, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 69, 21 nay, 1 present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 1158 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passage. I object to the motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 708 by Chairman Zachary, relative to the Senator Ben Ashley Opportunity Grant Act. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 708 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Zachary moves passage. Probably second. Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I actually moved to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1025.
Chairman Zachary moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1025. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1025 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Zachary moves passage of Senate Bill 1025 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Ms. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise from my seat in the Arctic Circle to withdraw this amendment. Thank you.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Zachary renews his motion. Any discussion? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. The amendment from Finance Ways and Means, where it makes reference to could result in decreased awards for other students unless additional funding in the amount of $2,100,000 is appropriated in fiscal year 22-23. Is that amount appropriated?
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every year we appropriate $113 million to the Ben Ashley Scholarship Fund, and this is contingent on that being appropriated every year. Currently, $113 million is appropriated, $103 million is used. With this bill, it'd be an additional $2 million for South College for distressed students. That's all it does.
Representative Hardaway.
All right, I want to make sure I understand because the numbers you gave would indicate that there's already enough being appropriated. So this is incorrect when it says additional 2 million.
Chairman Zachary.
There will be an additional 2 million from the appropriated 113. Currently 103 million is being used. At the addition of South College to the fund would take the additional 2 million, but it is contingent on every year that 113 million being appropriated.
Representative Hardaway.
All right, so no student will get a decrease in their award.
Chairman Zachary.
No.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the guideline the same as still for needy students,
Chairman Zachary.
financially needed?
Chairman Zachary.
Yes, sir.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, is this just for South College?
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The scholarship fund is for specific private schools, and South College fits the criteria for the scholarship fund, but has never been included. So this simply includes them in that.
Representative Mitchell.
Is South College a privately owned college by, say, one family or one individual?
Chairman Zachary.
It is because this scholarship fund is for private colleges.
Representative Mitchell.
So is it a for-profit college?
Chairman Zachary.
I can't speak to their business model, but this scholarship fund is for private schools, and South College fits the criteria of private schools to be included in the scholarship fund.
Representative Mitchell.
All right, I appreciate your answers, but it's hard for me to vote state funds for a profit for someone out of a scholarship program.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's important to remember this scholarship fund is for distressed students only. This is for distressed students only at those institutions.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the sponsor, listening to your explanation, I appreciate this legislation. From what I understand, it would be open if there are other colleges that fit the same criteria, if their primary domicile is in Tennessee.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They have to be domiciled in Tennessee and meet certain accreditation requirements to be included.
Representative Love.
Thank you. And I think I saw accredited by SACS, probably the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools.
Chairman Zachary.
Sorry, Representative Love. Can you repeat it? I couldn't understand your question.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Accredited by SACS.
Chairman Zachary.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1025, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 82, 10 nays.
Senate Bill 1025, having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 1173 by Representative Lynn, a resolution honor and commend Dr. Denise Sibley for her exemplary service to the state of Tennessee. Mr. Speaker, was previously considered and reset for today's regular calendar.
Representative Lynn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of HJR 1173.
Representative Lynn moves adoption. Bobby second. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Lynn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion for passage.
Representative Lynn renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 1173, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change your vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 71, 18 nays, 2 present, not voting.
House Joint Resolution 1173, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare adopted without objection. The motion reads here stable. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 1174 by Representative Lynn, a resolution to honor and commend Bernadette Pager for her exemplary service to the state of Tennessee.
Representative Lynn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of HJR 1174.
Representative Lynn moves adoption. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Lynn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Representative Lynn renews her motion. Any discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Joint Resolution 1174 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 68, 16 nays.
House Joint Resolution 1174, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare adopted without objection. The motion reads here stable. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 1237 by Representative Beck and others, a resolution to honor Chancellor Ellen Hobbs Lyle on the occasion of her retirement from the bench.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt House Joint Resolution 1237.
Representative Beck moves adoption. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the clerk to read the resolution, please.
Mr. Clerk, read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 1237 by Beck, a resolution to honor Chancellor Ellen Hobbs Lyle on the occasion of her retirement from the bench, whereas the members of this General Assembly take great pleasure in recognizing one of the finest jurists in the state has ever produced, namely Davidson County Chancellor Ellen Hobbs Lyle, and whereas Chancellor Lyle has taken a much-deserved retirement after 27 years of dedicated and insightful service with Davidson County's 20th District Chancery Court Part 3, having decided not to seek another term in the upcoming election, and whereas Chancellor Lyle has served on the bench since 1995 and has been elected 3 full terms on Davidson County Chancery Court, and whereas their exemplary judicial career has spanned a broad spectrum of business cases, including shareholder litigation, non-competition and trade secret disputes, corporate dissolutions, contract cases, accountings, mergers and acquisitions, and construction cases. And whereas Chancellor Lyle earned distinction as the highest ranked Davidson County State Trial Judge in 2014 National Bar Association poll, and she has received a AV preeminent rating from the Martindale Hubble. And whereas Ellen Hobbs Lyle began her career as an associate attorney with the law firm Watergate Prosecutors Leon Jaworski in Houston, Texas, and whereas returning home to Nashville in 1984, she practiced law as a partner in the firm of Trabue, Sturdivant, DeWitt until taking the bench in 1995, and whereas in addition to her service at the bar and on the bench, Chancellor Lyle was judiciary liaison for the Tennessee Supreme Court Advocacy Commission on Rules of Practice and Procedure from 2012 to 2015, and has served as archivist and director of the Lawyers Association for Women Marion Griffin Chapter. And whereas Chancellor Lyle earned her Bachelor of Arts degree with Phi Beta Kappa distinction from the University of Tennessee Knoxville and her JD from the University of Tennessee College of Law. And whereas the 5th generation Nashvilleian Ellen Hobbs Lyle is the daughter of Jack and Joanne Hobbs and a graduate of Harpeth Hall School. She is the mother of one daughter and is married to former Circuit Court Judge and former Senior Judge Walter C. Kurtz. And whereas throughout her illustrious tenure on the bench, Chancellor Lyle has exhibited the greatest integrity and intelligence and strong commitment to equity under law, and she is most worthy of the approbation and special occasion. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee and the Senate concurring that it is a pleasure and privilege for this body to honor Davidson County Chancellor Ellen Hobbs Lyle to the occasion of her retirement after 27 years on the bench. We extend to her gratitude for a difficult job well done. Our best wishes for much continued success and happiness.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Representative Beck renews his motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, we are voting. No objections. All right. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 1237 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 32, 45 nays, 13 present, not voting.
House Joint Resolution 1237, having failed to receive a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it referred to the Committee of Calendar and Rules. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2538 by Chairman Curcio and others relative to the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2478.
Chairman Curcio moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2478, properly second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2478 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Kershaw moves passage of Senate Bill 2478 on third and final consideration by second. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Roll the hill.
Without objection, roll to the hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Representative Bricken. Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Representative Bricken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 2 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 3 by Representative Halsey. Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Representative Halsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 3 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 4 by Representative Bricken. Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Representative Bricken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 4 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 5 by Chairman Curcio. Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Oh. Move passage. Move to adopt.
Chairman Kershaw moves adoption. Amendment number 5, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Any objection to the question? Representative Bricken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, on this legislation, again, and this amendment rewrites it, I was mostly bothered because this bill could affect current elections in process. And there that is, the effective date's October 1, that doesn't occur. But more I've studied this bill, the more it's bothered me. I mean, Tennessee's got a 200-year history of electing judges. So I'm not sure why we need this legislation at this date. I'm sure we've elected good attorneys that have become bad judges, and bad attorneys that have probably become good judges. I just concerned that we're vetting candidates that the public needs to vet, and that's not really our job. I mean, there could be legislation that determines the qualifications for us as members of the House. And so after kicking this around, I certainly hope we'll vote down this legislation. Thank you.
Any discussion on amendment number 5? I don't know. It's what are you thinking? You want to vote or you want to talk? Representative Miller.
Well, he's going to explain what the amendment. I just have a question, Mr. Speaker. Are we looking to reduce the term of judges from 8 years to? Are we reducing the term of office?
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, and I think it's a good time. We're on amendment number 5, but the amendment rewrites the bill, so I'll just explain what we're doing here, if that's okay. This simply says that judges must not be authorized, makes changes to the qualifications for judges. It says they must not be authorized to practice law in Tennessee, be in good standing with the Board of Professional Responsibility, and not be publicly censured, suspended, or disbarred within 10 years for conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. So this is saying that if you've been found to have been dishonest, fraudulent, deceptive, or misrepresenting yourself, then you have to take a 10-year timeout before you can run for judge. It doesn't say you're barred from being a judge forever. It says that if you've been convicted of one of those things by the Board of Professional Responsibility, then you have 10 years before you can run for judge. It doesn't take effect until October 1, so it doesn't impact anybody who's on the ballot. It also does not impact any current sitting judges because they're subject to the Board of Judicial Conduct.
Representative Miller.
Thank you for that explanation, but of course you are aware that within the next several weeks, we will be electing judges across the state with an 8-year term. Are you aware of that?
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am very aware of that. This bill does nothing to the term of a judge. This also doesn't impact it. You may be reading the caption and not the amendment.
Chairman Kershaw, keep going.
Okay, so this bill does not truncate or does not shorten a judge's term at all. The judge's terms are 8 years. This bill does nothing to change that.
Representative Miller.
Well, if this bill were to pass and become law, and let's say after the most immediate election is about to occur, then a judge violates the next day after the election. They win. They're in office for 8 years because this law will not impact them. Is that correct?
Chairman Kershaw.
Yes, sir, that's correct. This body saw fit to change the effective date to October 1.
Representative Miller.
Totally different subject, but we probably need to look at reducing those terms of offices, period, so that judges can go before the voters maybe once every 4 years as opposed to once every 8 years. And I think we'll get to where you're trying to go to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this bill doesn't do anything about the term of office for a judge. I would encourage you to bring that bill next year.
Chairman Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do these restrictions apply to attorneys who are running for elected office or statewide offices or any elected offices?
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, this bill simply deals with the qualifications to become a judge.
Chairman Dixie.
So we're saying we're holding the judges to a higher bar than we hold standard for our elected officials?
Chairman Kershaw.
I think by definition, judges are held to a higher standard.
Chairman Dixie.
But we make the laws that they uphold, right? So I would think that we would want to have the same restrictions upon any elected officials that are in this bill that we would have for ourselves.
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The caption's not broad enough to hold it, but I would encourage you to bring that bill next year.
Chairman Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question was answered. Thank you.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. My question was addressed.
All right, any further discussion? Representative Parkinson.
I'm getting pressured over here. Question on the bill.
Question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we are voting. Oh, voting on the amendment. Sorry, we're on the amendment. We're on the board. All those in favor of adopting amendment number 5, vote aye. When the bell rings, those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays, 1 present, unvoted.
Amendment number 5 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the body back to the heel of the amendments. House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Kershaw renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the sponsor, did you say, I think I heard you say that the judges are held to a higher standard than, say, our DAs, who this doesn't apply to? Was that an accurate statement?
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I never mentioned our District Attorney General Conference in any way, shape, or form. This caption only deals with qualifications for judges.
Chairman Kershaw. I'm sorry, Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When you said elected officials, that judges are held to higher standards that lawyers who are elected, the DAs, is encompassed within that statement. So again, I'll ask you, does this apply to DAs? And if not, why not?
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill deals with the qualifications to become a judge. So if it mentioned district attorneys, that would be outside the caption of the bill.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Chairman Farmer.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. And sponsor, thank you for bringing this piece of legislation as it moves through committee. I want the members to know what this is doing. We're sending a clear message to the public and those who are going to run for judge that we don't want someone who's going to partake in deceptive behavior, someone who lies to a court, someone who's going to lie to the public, and have those propensities to be dishonest. We don't want a dishonest person wearing a black robe. I wouldn't want a dishonest person trying to make a determination on something that's happened in my personal life. if I've been charged with a crime. So what we're saying is this: from this point forward, if you've been publicly censured because of you're dishonest, you can't tell the truth, you can't run for judge. That's what we're saying. I know a lot of people are saying, well, why didn't this apply to district attorneys? Why didn't it apply to public defenders? Why not other things? Well, we're taking it one step at a time. This applies us to judges from this point forward, and I wouldn't mind it taking effect today, to be completely honest with you, but to be fair to those who spent money on elections today. It's going to happen 2 weeks from now. We're going to have this apply October the 1st. But I want to thank you for bringing this legislation, because I want everybody to know who's watching that we're sending a clear message that we don't want dishonest judges on the bench. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2478 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take a vote.
Ayes 89, 3 nays.
Senate Bill 2478 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion for consideration is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolution 55 by Representative Reedy, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 9 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to disqualifications.
Representative Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request the clerk to read Senate Joint Resolution 55 for its second reading.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Joint Resolution 55 on the second reading, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 9 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to disqualifications. Be resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that a 2/3 majority of all the members of each house concurring, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals, that it is proposed that Article 9, Section 1 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by deleting the section. Be it further resolved that in accordance with Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee, the foregoing proposed amendment shall be submitted to the people at the next general election in which a governor is to be chosen, the same being the 2022 November general election, and the Secretary of State is directed to place such proposed amendment on the ballot for that election. Be it further resolved that the clerk of the Senate is directed to deliver copies of this resolution to the Secretary of State, with this final resolving clause being deleted from such copies.
Representative Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Senate Joint Resolution 55 be set for its third and final reading on Wednesday, April 27th, the year of our Lord, 2022.
Without objection, so ordered. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolution 913 by Chair Lady Hazelwood, a resolution proposing an amendment to Article 2, Section 31 of the Constitution of Tennessee to allow the investment of state funds in equities.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request the clerk read Senate Joint Resolution 913 for its second reading.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 913 on the second reading, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 2, Section 31, Article 2, Section 31 of the Constitution of Tennessee to allow the investment of state funds in equities. Whereas because Article 2, Section 31 prohibits the state from becoming an owner in whole or in part of any bank or a stockholder with others in any association, company, corporation, or municipality, the state cannot invest the state's funds in equities, including but not limited to ownership in both public and private companies. And whereas this prohibition can limit the return that the state receives upon the investment of its funds, and whereas the decreased rate of return can inhibit the state's ability to provide needed services to Tennesseans, and whereas a constitutional amendment is necessary to ensure that the state is able to invest its funds for the greatest benefit of its citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that a majority of all the members of each house concurring, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals, that it is proposed that Article 2, Section 31 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by deleting the section and substituting instead the following. Section 31, the credit of this state shall not be hereafter loaned or given to or in aid of any person, association, company, corporation, or municipality. The state shall not become the owner in whole or in part of any bank or a stockholder with others in any association, company, or corporation, notwithstanding the foregoing. The governing body of the state official charged or the state official charged with carrying out the purpose of or objectives of a fund or trust that is administered or invested by the state treasurer and that contains state funds in whole or in part may adopt with approval of the treasurer and the comptroller of the treasury an investment policy to authorize all or part of such fund or trust to be invested such that the state would become an owner in whole or in part of any bank or stockholder with others in any association, company, or corporation.
All right, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize. There was an error in the reading, and as this is a constitutional amendment, I'll have to begin from the beginning. Senate Joint Resolution 913, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 2, Section 31 of the Constitution of Tennessee to allow the investment of state funds in equities. Whereas because Article 2, Section 31 prohibits the state from becoming an owner in whole or in part of any bank or a stockholder with others in any association, company, corporation, or municipality, the state cannot invest the state's funds in equities, including but not limited to ownership in both public and private companies. And whereas this prohibition can limit the return that the state receives upon the investment of its funds. And whereas the decreased rate of return can inhibit the state's ability to provide needed services to Tennesseans, and whereas a constitutional amendment is necessary to ensure that the state is able to invest its funds for the greatest benefit of its citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that a majority of all the members of each House concurring, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals, that it is proposed that Article 2, Section 31 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by deleting the section and substituting instead the following. Section 31, the credit of this state shall not be hereafter loaned or given to or in aid of any person, association, company, corporation, or municipality. The state shall not become the owner in whole or in part of any bank or a stockholder with others in any association, company, or corporation, notwithstanding the foregoing, the governing body or state official charged with carrying out the purpose or objectives of a fund or trust that it is administered or invested by the state treasury and that contains state funds in whole or in part may adopt with approval of the treasurer and the comptroller of the treasury an investment policy to authorize all or part of such fund or trust to be invested such that the state would become an owner in whole or in part of any bank or a stockholder with others in any association, company, or corporation. Be it further resolved that the foregoing amendment be referred to the 113th General Assembly and that this resolution proposing such amendment be published by the Secretary of State in accordance with Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee. Be it further resolved that the clerk of the Senate is directed to deliver copies of this resolution to the Secretary of State with this final resolving clause being deleted from such copies.
One more time. Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that SJR 913 be set for its third and final reading on Wednesday, April 27th, 2022.
Without objection, so ordered. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Call next calendar, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a message calendar.
Call first message, Mr.
House
Clerk.
Bill 1834 by Representative Hall and others relative to DUI offenses. Mr. Speaker, on April 20th, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 1834 for Senate Bill 2103, adopted Amendment 2, passed House Bill 1834 as amended.
Representative Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur with Senate Amendment Number 2.
Representative Hall moves to concur in Senate Amendment Number 2. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Powell.
Sorry, could you just give me a brief description of what that does?
Representative Hall.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This adds just a couple of names. Instead of known as Bentley's Law, it is now known as Ethan, Haley, and Bentley's Law. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
Any further discussion? Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of a Senate Amendment Number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Amendment number 2, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurred in without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill 2204 by Chairman Rudd, relative to regional authorities and special districts. Mr. Speaker, on April 14, 2022, the Senate non-concurred in House Amendment number 2.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senate version is weaker and less transparent than the House, and for that reason, I move that we refuse to recede from our action in adopting Amendment 1 and 2.
Without objection, we refuse to recede. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2291 by Leader Love and others relative to education. Mr. Speaker, on April 14, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 2291 for Senate Bill 2508, adopted Amendment 2, and passed House Bill 2508 as amended.
Representative Rudd, Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in Senate Amendment number 2.
Representative Love moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 2, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Spicky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you give a brief explanation of what the amendment does?
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Amendment number 2 simply adds the Civil Rights Act of 1866 to this current legislation.
Representative Spicky, very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Freeman, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take, Hodges, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Amendment number 2, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurred in without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2673 by Senator Granger, relative to education. Mr. Speaker, on April 14, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 2673 for Senate Bill 2684, adopted Amendment 1, and passed House Bill 2673 as amended.
Representative Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to non-concur to Senate Amendment number 1.
Without objection, we non-concur. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Representative Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate introduction and consideration of HJR 1253.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption. Representative Russell.
I move to withdraw my motion.
Without objection, withdraw. Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate consideration of SJR 1803.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption.
Senate Joint Resolution 1803 by Representative Boyd, a resolution honoring and congratulating the congregation of Fall Creek Baptist Church on the celebration of the church's 200th anniversary.
You've heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, rules suspended. Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur to Senate Joint Resolution number 1803.
Representative Boyd moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 1803, probably seconded. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I declare concurred in without objection. Motion for reconsider is tabled. Representative Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate consideration of Senate Joint Resolution number 1805.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption.
Senate Joint Resolution 1805 by Chairman Whitson, a resolution to honor the memory of Jimmy Gentry of Franklin.
You've heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, the rules are suspended. Representative Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in Senate Joint Resolution number 1805.
Representative Whitson moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 1805, properly seconded. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I declare it concurred in without objection. Motion for reconsideration is tabled. Lear Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members, several procedural motions here, mainly because hopefully we may be in the last week of this particular session. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bills 2,914 and 2,915 be heard in the Local Government Committee this week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that the rules be suspended to introduce House Resolution 208 and that the same be heard in the Criminal Justice Committee this week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 1927 be heard in the Finance Subcommittee this week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and this is the expanded flow motion. And so I'll be reading all of the rules that we would propose to suspend at this time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the portions of the following rules be suspended for the remainder of the 2022 session. Rule number 17, so that all congratulatory memorializing resolutions can be placed directly on the next consent calendar. Rule number 49, the 48-hour rule, so that all bills moved from calendar and rules can be set on the next floor calendar. Rule number 49, the 25 bill limit rule, so that more than 25 bills may be placed on the calendar for final consideration on any one day. Rule number 50, the 72-hour rule for posting the consent calendar, so that local bills and all other bills and resolutions coming out of calendar and rules can be placed on the next consent calendar on a daily basis. Rule number 59, notice provisions, so that all bills from the Senate with messages can be announced and or automatically placed on the next message calendar. Rule number 67, so that committee and subcommittee meetings can be held at times other than those specified in the House weekly schedule and with less than 72 hours notice. Rule number 71, the 24-hour rule requiring all amendments to be available to members 24 hours before consideration on the floor. Rule number 83 is subpart 1, so that all bills reported out of the subcommittee can be heard on the next full committee calendar without waiting a week. Rule number 83, subpart 1, so that all bills reported out of the committee can be heard in the next committee or subcommittee without waiting a week. And rule number 83, subpart 1, so that items in the committee and subcommittee can be placed on the next calendar, notwithstanding the Wednesday 3:30 deadline for placing bills on notice.
You have heard the motion, probably seconded. Is there any objection? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. Just a question for the sponsor, for the leader. Did any of those rule changes apply to the time for amendments to be filed in committee?
Leader Lamberth.
It is my understanding in consultation with the clerk just a few moments ago that that is more a committee procedure and that we do not suspend the rules for that particular issue.
Representative Hardaway. All right. Any further? Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I move that the rules be suspended for immediate introduction and consideration of House Resolution number 210.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption.
House Resolution 210 by Leader Lamberth, a resolution to approve the annual events by certain 501c organizations in accordance with the provisions of Article 11, Section 5 of the Constitution of Tennessee and pursuant to the Tennessee Nonprofit Gaming Law.
You heard the caption. Any objections? Without objections, the rules are suspended. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and this is the annual late notice for the charitable gaming applications that have come in after the deadline, and this is the resolution that is needed for these entities to be able to do their charitable gaming events. With that, I move adoption of House Resolution number 210.
Leader Lamberth moves adoption of House Resolution 210, probably seconded. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're on the board. All those in favor of House Resolution 210, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Take the vote, Mr. Clerk.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Resolution 210 having received a vote in the affirmative by 2/3 majority of the members elected to 112th General Assembly, I hereby declare it adopted. Without objection, the motion for reconsideration is tabled. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I need to announce that Local Government Full will be opening up at 10:30 on House Hearing Room 1 tomorrow. 10:30 House Hearing Room 1.
Thank you. Chairman Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Likewise, members, criminal justice will open tomorrow at 11 o'clock at House Hearing Room 1. Tomorrow, 11 o'clock, House Hearing Room 1.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to announce that I really appreciated the discrimination and harassment training today. I thought it was a very, very good training. It was nice to learn that our responsibilities and duties to report things that we see, and learning that if we have a colleague who wants to be called by different pronouns, we need to do that or we will be reported, and we'll be, otherwise we will be known to be creating a toxic work environment if we don't call people the things that they want to be called as adults. I appreciate that training today. Thank you.
I missed that part. Representative Lynn, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I may be out of order, but during session tonight, I found out that my niece, her significant other, they have two small children, 5 years old and 3 years old. He had had a heart attack with a blood clot last Thursday, and we waited all weekend. They put him in a coma, and they started trying to wake him up on Sunday. Well, they pronounced him brain dead tonight, and he's 31 years old, and they will be letting him pass. And if we could just say a moment of prayer. My niece is also 31, and they have two very tiny children, and it will be very hard for her to break this news to them. Thank you.
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Finance, Ways and Means Subcommittee will meet in House Hearing Room 1 tomorrow at 11:30. Again, that's 11:30, House Hearing Room 1.
Representative Towns.
Speaker, if you don't mind, will you allow the clerk to give us the schedule in the morning? Are we doing session tomorrow, or what is our?
Yeah, we'll get
schedule?
there as soon as we're done with announcements. Let's get through
Good deal.
these. Chairman Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd ask everyone to stand up and stand up and have a moment of silence. My wife's great aunt passed away today. She was 105. She celebrated her 105th birthday on March 23rd. And today she passed away, 105 years, and she was in very, very good shape. But Alzheimer's kind of took control of her body and her mind, and she went downhill. Mrs. Winston is what I call her lovingly. I don't even know her first name because I always call her Mrs. Winston. But I thank you. Just have just a quick moment of silence for Miss Winston. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if you will continue to stand, please. I want us to take a moment of silence for a dear friend of mine's family, Ms. Tammy Sawyer. She's a county commissioner in Shelby County, and her brother Mike Hooks. They lost their mom, Ms. Gladys Sawyer. And if we will, just have a moment of silence for them too also, please. Amen.
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to announce that Finance Full will meet tomorrow afternoon at 2 in House Hearing Room 1. That's 2 o'clock for Finance Full. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, calendar and rules will meet tomorrow at 3:30. Tomorrow at 3:30. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, any further announcements? Mr. Clerk, repeat that.
Mr. Speaker, the full schedule for tomorrow is as follows. House session at 9 a.m. So we're back on the floor at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Local 10:30, and these are all in House Hearing Room 1. Local committee at 10:30, criminal at 11, finance sub at 11:30, finance full at 2, calendar and rules at 3:30.
Any questions on the calendar, schedule? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I missed part of that announcement with the noise. Could the clerk remake that announcement, please?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, once again, 9 o'clock House session. So we'll be back here on the floor at 9 a.m. Local at 10:30, criminal at 11, finance sub at 11:30, Finance full at 2 p.m., calendar and rules at 3:30. And once again, all committee meetings will be in House Hearing Room 1.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 93 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 9 a.m. Tuesday, April 26, 2022.
Without objection, the House stands in recess until 9 a.m. on Tuesday, April 26, 2022.